Hello everybody, and welcome again to our course Psychology of Learning. This is Dr. Rogers Noguera, and we are now in the sixth module, and the title of our module is The Constructivist Theory of Learning in Teachers' Classroom. And for our module's learning outcome, so the first is we have to understand the fundamental principles and concepts of constructivist theory of learning. And the second is to connect the theory to classroom practices. And the third is to connect the theory to classroom cases, to classroom situations, specifically on the case that we've been working on since the beginning of the semester, in the case of Zainab, and come up with some practical solution to solve classroom cases for the case of Zainab. And the keywords, the important keywords that we have to remember in this module are the social construct, scaffolding, and zone of proximal development. So let's understand the word construct. So what comes to your mind when you hear or you encounter the word construct? So as you see in the picture, so they're building a specific structure. So when we talk about construct, it's just like putting all the elements together, piling things together until they come up with a specific goal. In a similar case, when we talk about constructivism also, so it goes in the same manner that we are also looking into how we build our thinking process, how we build the mind, of children. The constructivism, when we talk about constructivist theory of learning, this is just very much similar to cognitive theory of learning. It's just almost similar, almost the same. The only difference is that the constructivist theory of learning combines cognition and the social processes, put together the cognitive processes and the social processes. You would have to remember also that when we are studying theory is basically a reaction, a development from the previous theory. As we move forward in the discussion about constructivism, you will notice that there are some familiar concepts that we already have discussed before, right? So you will encounter that and pay attention to that. So going back, so with constructivism, this is just a combination of the cognitive process and the social process, and you put it together, and you have the constructivist theory of learning. Now, let us now get into the most fundamental principles of constructivism. Okay. First, children are born with building blocks of cognition, visual recognition, memory, attention, and speed of processing. Do you remember this one when we talk about biological theory of learning? So we have talked about sensory, memory, and the brain process, the mind, the thinking, and the like process, specifically the brain, the neuroscience of learning. So again, when you talk about constructivism, we don't take that basic principle in terms of the sensory, the memory, and the brain process. And we are also talking about the speed of processing. So you will also, have to remember when we're talking about the way children think. So children would have different way of processing information, the speed of processing, the time of processing, primarily because of the individual differences in terms of the way they use the experience and the way they use their sensory the memory, and other brain processes. Again, right? Children construct the meaning of their learning in different way. So just look in the picture. You might be presenting, you might be teaching children about music. By the end of the day, children would have look into different interests. So for example, a child would be involved in piano, be involved in playing a violin. I forgot the name of this one, or be involved in playing this kind of instrument. So in a similar manner also, when we're talking about learning of children in the classroom, for example, you're teaching language, math, science, what else, or Islamic. So when we look at this subject, so we'll have to remember that children will be building their own construct in their mind based on their specific interests and experiences, and that would account for their diversity in responding to the subject that you're going to teach. So in terms of constructivism, I mean the premise is that children will definitely, whatever stimulus you present to children will definitely respond to the curriculum, or respond to the subject in a very different way. Why? Again, because they are coming from different experiences and different construct, which build that different experiences that build that construct. Okay, learning begins with social interaction. We have to remember that when we become a teacher, when we are subscribing to the constructivist theory of learning, that we have also to consider building the building of relationships side by side with implementing a curriculum that we integrate an important element, which is the social interaction, social relationship, social connection. Okay. Social processes influence children's learning. Learning is a social and mental activity. In comparison to the cognitive process, which is very much focused on the dynamics of the thoughts, on organizing the thoughts. So in the constructivist theory, it is not only about the mental activity, it is also about the interaction of people, the social connection. And very often these influence the way children learn. Just for example, excuse me, if children have a very good relationship with their teacher, for example, you're teaching math, so it's like if children are very comfortable with the teacher because there is very good connection between the children and the teacher. So it's like, it's like when you're teaching math, it's like even very often children would fear math or some anxiety with mathematics. But if children have great connection with the teacher, so they will be able to overcome their fear because they have a very approachable teacher, a very welcoming teacher. In the same manner also, if children would have a very good relationship with each other, so they tend to be helping each other, they get to to support each other in whatever they do inside the classroom, so that helps the mental activity. Children bring cultural experiences, attitudes, and values in the school. So remember when I've been telling you before, even before we meet the children, some values are already there. Lots of experiences have been there already. So these are things we don't overlook, we don't set aside. Because whether we like it or not, children will be using those experiences to make sense of what is happening in the classroom. Just for example, even for example, we talk about an Arabic culture. There are so many there are so many experiences of Arabic culture. The culture from Yemen is entirely different from the culture of Bahrain against the culture, for example, of Iran or Iraq or Saudi or other GCC countries. And when you look at this, just simply looking at the Arab world, there are different experiences, attitudes, the way in dealing with life, family, culture, society, even with the way they cook their food. There are just so many things happening. So these things happening in the cultural, the social cultural experiences of children, they bring that in the school. And you might be surprised how children integrate that in the way they learn, and even in their own in the behavior of children in the class, they bring that. So so you have to be aware on how you're going to make use of that rich culture to deepen the understanding of what you're teaching the children, because when you're able to connect the culture, your subject deepens the culture. On the other hand, also the culture deepens the way they understand the curriculum, the math, the science, the language. Okay. In the constructivism, children and teachers work together to learn. Okay, take note of that. They are there to learn. They're not just to compete with each other, just the process of thinking. They have to be there to work together. Okay. In constructivism, teacher and students respect diversity in interests and progress. Okay. That's why I put here, it's okay to be different. So we have to emphasize that as a teacher, that it's okay to be different. It's okay to have a different sets of belief that makes you a good person. It's okay to have a different color. It's okay to have diversity in terms of gender, in terms of culture. Whether you come from Bahrain, you come from Yemen, you come from Syria, you come from Iraq, or you come from Iran, you come from Saudi. It doesn't really matter. This call is okay to be different. So regardless of your color, okay, whether you are black or white or brown, whatever, it doesn't really matter. Okay, it's just okay to be different. And regardless of diversity, we create an atmosphere inside the classroom where there is a respect for being different. And it's not an issue at all. Okay. And another thing that is very salient about constructivism is that the understanding that children bring with them some misconceptions about life. We have lots of misconceptions. Some understanding of life that was just passed on to us without really validating whether there's some truth on it or not. There's some truth on it or not. Okay. Just for example, some misconception that male are better than female. Right. So there might be some situation of differences, but it doesn't mean the conception that male have to overpower children because of that understanding. So we create an opportunity to correct that. Just for example, the misconception that if you belong to that specific culture, you are not good. And if you belong to this very specific culture, you are better than the other culture. So we have to correct that understanding. And what example of misconception? The misconception that math can kill you. Okay, if some children have heard some experience from other children before, we have a very difficult math subject, a very terrorizing teacher, so they bring with that misconception. Now you as a teacher, You challenge that misconception and allow the children to overcome those misconceptions and correct that misconception. Because there might be some misconception that create a gap, that create a block in the learning process of children. Right. Brain maturation influence learning. Sounds familiar, right? So I'm not going to elaborate much of it because we already took that. What module? The module on biological theory learning. We also talk about that in the cognitive theory of learning. So as the brain mature, as the brain grow, as the brain acquire experiences, so that influence learning. Okay, so that also accounts to the brain of children of children with special need, the brain of children with exceptional capability. So that also this aspect covers that. The next one is children are capable of higher mental function. So children are capable of going from a simple undertakings to a more complex um, capability of doing a specific task. But we always have to be mindful of individual students' capacity, potential, and limitation. So um, even we are looking into providing children a more sophisticated goal. We also have to remember that each child in the classroom would have its own unique capacity, potential, and limitation. Remember, we have been talking about that in the previous module. In the constructivist theory, we help children, the adults, or the parents, especially the parents and the teachers, help children interpret the world. So we create an opportunity for them to help them to interpret what's happening in the world. So from the classroom, we give them a tool to understand what's happening with the reality outside. As for example, currently we are in a pandemic situation. What is COVID-19? So we provide them a very systematic way in dealing with it. So we wouldn't just threaten children, you're gonna die, you get that. So it's like fine, but we provide as an educator, we provide them with a more positive and a productive way in dealing with the situation, with information that we feed them. Okay, so teachers provide information and processes to critically and creatively see the world. So it's like the information that we give them, it's also an information to become more critical, to analyze things, to evaluate things. This is true or not true? Is this fake news or is the real news? You know? And we become more creative in responding. Just for example, with the COVID-19, it's like how am I going to teach the children to respond on this creatively, rather than build up more anxiety that makes people unproductive? I might as well, create a system that would help children to positively and productively cope with the situation. And the next is adults and teachers provide children with cognitive tools to interpret the world in positive and productive way. Okay, just for example, we create a transition from the classroom to the outside world. So for example, we're talking about the climate change. So after your discussion about that in the classroom, so children will be able to think on the situation of the planet. So might as well um, help in planting trees. Okay. Next, children see learning in relationship with their real world. Okay, so it's just similar to what I've mentioned a while ago. So what is the real world? The real world is about friendship, community relationship, family, some aspect of ecology, some aspect of politics, some aspects of economy, or some aspect of dealing with culture. So we are creating an opportunity for children to absorb knowledge, information that will be useful for them in facing the world when they become adult people, adult in the future. Okay, next is social constructivism. In terms we talk about social constructivism, learners first construct knowledge in social context and then individually internalize it. So it's not only about a what you call this a social interaction that builds learning, but we also create a an opportunity for children to a kind of introspection, a kind of reflection of his individual role in the society. So from social to individual, there's the interaction of of creating an opportunity to reflect. Who will I be if with this knowledge? Who will I be in the future? How will my dream respond to the problem that is happening in the world right now? Okay. Okay, so this is another concept of in that you will encounter in education, which is scaffolding. What is scaffolding? Again, at the beginning of the slide, you see the building, the construction. So you see, this is a real example of scaffolding. So these are bars that you put together. Then as you move upward, then you add more bars so that you can you can step up to what you to step up and achieve what you wanted to achieve. In the same manner, also when you're talking about scaffolding in learning, you create a process for children to a step to achieve a certain goal. Okay. And very similar to the scaffolding is the concept of zone of proximal development. Okay, so as mentioned, this is very much related to scaffolding. And children progress in performing a task with the help and guidance of others. So the children are guided by parents or by teachers or their peer or their friends to accomplish a specific things. I think we also have mentioned about this in the cognition, and I think in the humanistic theory, that along the way, when children begin to understand, okay, so with the specific structure, with the specific steps, begin the children be able to really master a specific skill, right? And again, helping children we help children recognize and to own their capacity, potential, and limitation. So again, when we are creating an opportunity for children to target a specific skill, we also create an opportunity for children to recognize and to become aware. Oh, this is my capacity. This is my potential. I'm still capable of doing this, but at the same time, this is my specific limitation. On the other hand, also, by being able to to master a specific step, then later on the child will be able to work independently, side by side with a very strong interaction and relationship with the people around him or people around her. Right, the transfer, the ability to apply a learning to a different context. So regardless what we're teaching, for example, we're teaching about math, science, or Arabic, or Islamic, or any kind of course. So the challenge now is how am I going to make use of this learning, for example, in Islamic or in Arabic? How can I make use of that to be transferred in the real world of your children? That's something that can be very, very useful to them in day-to-day life. Something that they will be able to practically use when they get out of my classroom. So when I'm talking about language, when I'm teaching them English or I'm teaching them math, how will children be able to make use of that outside the classroom? Next, let's now get into a more specific instructional strategies in using constructivist theory of learning. Okay, so you're very much familiar with this one. Children work together as a group or a class, a collaborative work. So in constructivism, they maximize group works. So you have been always using that, but you always have to bear in mind when you're doing group work, you really have to plan it. You just don't do group work for the sake of doing group work. So you have to maximize, what do I want to achieve with this group work, right? What specific skills, what specific knowledge, what specific value am I going to emphasize? And the next one is the connect learning to specific social experience or context. So again, I mentioned that a while ago. For example, in the picture, so you're talking about here about, for example, science. So what is very relevant now in terms of science? So is the climate change. So you can connect a specific topic in science so that children will be more acquainted, children will be more connected to the challenges of the climate change. Okay, so how am I going to connect the English language to climate change? How am I going to connect How am I going to connect mathematics, for example, with the issue of diversity, or the issue of equality, or the issue of peace? Teacher provides activity that will help children look at the world in a better way. So it's looking here in the picture. It's like when you're talking about science. So science is not only about what's happening in the classroom, but when the children step out of the classroom, they become more sensitive. They become more open-minded to what they see. So what you see here in the picture, children are picking up dirt, rubbish from the sea, and organizing them. So this is a very, very concrete example on how we can connect what is happening in the classroom, building and experiences, creating an opportunity to add up, to construct experiences that will be helpful for them to see the world in a better way. And the next one is children should be able to communicate their ideas freely, okay, diversely and meaningfully. So there are many ways of teaching children how to communicate: drama, arts, some sorts of creativity, music, being able to write, to talk about story, puppetry. There are just so many ways, creative ways by which we can create a path for children to freely express themselves. Next, give children challenging tasks. Okay, so I mentioned that already. You would know how to size up the progress of children. So you just don't be contented that they already have accomplished things. So fine if they already have accomplished a specific goal in the curriculum, but most probably there's still much space, much opportunity for children to level up their learning process, they level up their accumulation of knowledge and experiences. Okay, and again, be aware again of their capacity, potential, and limitation, because overlooking the capacity, potential, and limitation, you might putting the life of children in danger. There's always a limit to what they can achieve, but the children also have to be aware about that. And the next one is coaching You're familiar about the word coaching. I mean, when you had your driving lesson, you have a coach beside you who telling you this is what you're supposed to do. It's just similar to coaching. And guidance will help children achieve their higher potential. So what is basic about coaching and guidance is fundamentally about understanding your specific goal in your specific goal as a teacher, and the specific goals of children, and targeting what they really want in their life at the moment and in the future, what they want to achieve. Okay, what exactly is my potential? This is very much related to humanistic theory of learning. What is my dream? What are the dreams of children? And if they don't have any dream, how am I going to build up the dreams of children? So this is now your other role as a teacher. You will be coaching children and guiding children to really have a clear picture on what they want to achieve in life. Okay, we have already talked about this. So one of the strategies you're going to make use in the classroom is the scaffolding. Then wherein you create a step-by-step procedure, a clear instruction on how they're supposed to achieve a specific goal. So that basically about scaffolding. So for example, again, when you are giving them a specific project to finish, so give them a clear instruction what they are supposed to do, the target goal. So what are the expectations, to clarify the expectations, so on and so forth. So that's the example of scaffolding. And an aspect also of scaffolding is that when children are able to ask more questions to clarify their goals, to clarify what they wanted to achieve. Teacher as facilitator of learning. So remember that. So although being directive in terms of teaching, so we have to remember also that we also act as a facilitator. What do you mean by being a facilitator? So we don't set aside the fact that children are independent learners also, and we want them to be independent in the way they look at things. But previously I mentioned about guiding children and coaching children. It's a similar thing when you become a coach and guide the children. So it's just more of facilitating. So you're just validating. Okay, you are in the right path. You're doing the right thing. Okay, you're just like you create a thumbs up. You are in the right direction. You're on the right path. So instead of children becoming very dependent on you as a source of information, now you pass on the responsibility to children that you are capable of finding information. Much more now in the present 21st century, almost all the information that we need are outside there. We just only have to sort out information and put together to come up to target a specific goal. Okay. Children should see learning math, science, Arabic, Islamic, Arabic, and English as a tool to understand and solve real problems in this society. So the constructivists look at the subject that we teach as merely just a tool. They are just tools to strengthen experiences, to build useful experiences, to build meaningful experiences that will be useful for children in the future. So it's not just a matter of not just teaching for the sake of teaching. So the value of what we teach should be very, very useful to solve problems in the society. So we have so many issues in our society right now. So how am I going to create a program for children that really create a programs on the way they construct their minds and life that will become an effective tool for them to not only to cope with life, but to shape their life in becoming a beautiful, a better person, a productive person in the future. The next one is give them very meaningful feedback. What do you mean by meaningful feedback? They just don't say you're right, you're wrong. But what does it mean when you say it's meaningful? Meaningful is when when children are able to learn from their mistake, when children are able to connect, I mean, to understand the gap from what they're trying to understand. Meaningful is when the children begin to recognize, oh, I'm doing the right thing. Oh, this is what I missed. This I have to correct it. Meaningful is also is about being the children be able to connect with their own experiences and translate that experiences to a more, let's say, a more productive set of goals. Okay? And when you talk about meaningful also, when as a teacher give feedback, the child become inspired of what you're talking about. So because there are some feedbacks that really, destroy the imagination and creativity of children. So take note of that, because on our side as a teacher, we might think that it's a good feedback, but on the perception of children, so it might be creating anxiety on them. You know, it might be creating some kind of, I think I'm really a bad student. So we have to be very, very careful about them. We have to be aware about that on how the children perceive our feedback to them. So what will the more practical way to understand how they perceive it? They ask them, so what do you think about my feedback to you? And you will understand. Then you will know if children, are connected, meaningfully with the kind of feedback you gave them. Next. This is one of very exciting part is to play. Don't forget to play with the children. And it is just not only about playing for the sake of playing. You have to organize your play. So things become exciting for children. Things create an atmosphere of motivating atmosphere. But you have to plan what is exactly the goal of the play. It should also be knowledge building, information building, and experience building. Because at the end of the play, children will be able to realize something. Okay, there's something that I learned about this play. So you ask a process question afterwards. You ask question, what did you learn about it? What's the connections? For example, the last activity that we had, when you ask what's the connection of this activity to what we're trying to learn. So as a teacher, always create an opportunity to organize a play for children. Of course, again, very much connected to your learning goals. So to sum up everything is like learning is not, to sum up constructivist theory of learning is not only an individual thinking process, it is a social process. Okay, it is not only the mind, it is also about relationship. Okay. The next one is a teacher should provide all the possible opportunity for children to construct and a positive and productive mind in life. So, for example, you're teaching the children for 1 hour. So that 1 hour of 1 hour of opportunity of children in your classroom, that is also an hour of opportunity for children shape their life and their mind in terms of positivity, in terms of productivity. Okay. Right. Questions for reflection. Let's now use the constructivist theory of learning to answer the following questions. How will you use math, science, Islamic, English, and Arabic to help children see the world in a positive and productive way? Okay, that's very interesting. So regardless of your specialization when you become a teacher, how am I going to make use of my course? So that children will become very positive, will become beautiful person in the future, will become very responsible person in the future. And the second one is, what are the Bahrain children's misconception about life that you would like to change? So Can you list down some misconceptions of children about life that you have to correct when they become your students in the future? And how will you change it? And the third one is, how will you use math, science, Islamic, English, and Arabic as a tool to help children understand and solve problems in the society? So I mentioned about that a while ago. So how are you going to make use of your own course to solve a specific problems in our society? So for example, the pandemic, the COVID-19. So how are you going to make use of that when they return from their home to return to the regular classes? How are you going to introduce this this phenomenon that we are in now to understand the different aspects of life? How are you going to connect that to different aspects of life, the culture, the economy, the relationship, the health aspect, the environment? Okay, and last but not the least, how will a constructivist teacher, if you're a constructivist teacher, okay, how will you help Zainab, our case? How are you going to help Zainab? What could be the reason why, when you make use of the constructivist theory, what could be the reason, in a constructive way, constructivism way, what could be the reason that led Zainab into that experience? And in a constructive way also, how am I going to help Zainab to go back to a normal life that she was, okay, and become more productive again, more engaging again in the classroom. All right, that's the end of the module. And again, thank you so much for listening, and I wish you the best of life, safe life, healthy life, wellness in your life, and God bless all of you. Bye-bye. Take care.